Hi, I really hope this setup works and doesn't sound silly. My friends, this is something that's been stewing in my brain for literally like the past, I don't know, a year, and I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, but it's one of those things that, why is it shaking? It's one of those things that's a really common struggle, I think, but and like a shared human experience, but a lot of people don't know how to verbalize it. So I'm going to make an attempt today. I am sick and tired of watching other people's success stories, and I think it's time to create my own. I've been avoiding this work for so long because, due to feelings of overwhelm, and also the fact that when you grow up in a unstable when you have an unstable childhood, and if you live in a deprived area, or if you grew up in poverty, if you have childhood trauma, um, your life kind of becomes about survival. It becomes about conserving energy. So the concept of prosperity and success and living authentically and living well is like a distant fantasy. It's almost like it's a privilege, and it is a privilege because a lot of people live their lives are about day-to-day survival, and it's about just making ends meet. It's about keeping safe. That's the reality for a lot of people in the world. But if you are privileged enough to get to a point where you've cleared that stage of survival, there are needs that start to become clear to you, that take the place of the more basic needs. One of them is the need for self-actualization. And I think it's something that's easy to avoid because basic survival always takes precedent. I feel like for a long time, particularly more noticeably in the last year or so since my psychotic episode, there's been like a long-standing battle between this part of me that wants to stay small, conserve energy, survive, and it has kind of come to. I'm very comfortable right now in the behavior patterns that I developed throughout my childhood and early adolescence to survive my environment, to survive what was happening in my environment. That's the environment we're talking about. I'm just kidding. It's New Year's Eve, so there's fireworks. Yeah, the part of me that wants to stay small and survive. I've come to rely on certain behavior patterns, to kind of get me through my life up until now. You probably heard of this concept if you're in the personal development self-help space, of like you get to a point in your life where you realize, I think especially in adulthood, when you start to gain more self-awareness and your responsibilities start to expand, you get to a point where you realize that those habits, they helped you survive, yes, but they're no longer working in your favor. They are now hindering you from expanding into the person that you're supposed to be. And that is a really painful place to be, where you have that awareness, you understand that kind of way of living, that kind of way of those habits of avoidance, escapism, sometimes isolation, and just generally like indulging, just forgetting about the world. You start to realize that that's not serving you anymore in your adulthood. Then that's a really weird place to be, because you don't yet have the new awareness that you need. You don't have the new habits and the new tools that you need, but you have this understanding that you need to get there somehow. And so it creates kind of like a cognitive dissonance. It's like the schism between who you know you could be, your potential, your future, and your current reality. And for a long time, I got stuck in this loop of trying to create a clear picture of who that future version of me is. I spent a lot of my time and energy trying to like get like a higher resolution kind of view of who that person is and trying to understand it better, because I thought that understanding that would be what motivates me to go after it. Because I felt my priority shift somewhere inside of me, but it didn't, I just didn't have that fire. Sometimes I'd get moments of inspiration that would last, I don't know, days, if I was lucky, weeks. But it would eventually fizzle out. And there's this concept of like self-discipline, how self-discipline you shouldn't rely on motivation and inspiration. You should rely on self-discipline. I understand that intellectually, but it's never sort of, I don't know how to explain it. It's just never clicked somehow. I could get into this topic. I could talk about it for years and years and years. But the main point that I'm trying to make is that this is where I am. I'm at the point where I've spent a long time understanding who I want to be. But of course, you can't really do that without taking action. It's action. It's the progressing towards that gives you a clearer view. The closer you get, the clearer it becomes. I think I'm at a point now where I'm sick of the cycle that I've been in for the past how many years. I'm sick of the cycle of yearning and dancing around the work that needs to be done. Part of the issue is also that I struggle staying present because of the feelings of overwhelm that kind of bubble up when I think about all of the things that need to be done in order to get to where I need to be. I think everyone has like a mental checklist of stuff, like they have like a backlog of things from like old projects and ideas from years and years ago that you've been intending to make something out of. When you put aside the distractions, all of everything just comes rushing back to you, and it's at that point where you either break and you retreat back into the old version of you who just wants to curl up in a ball and ignore it all, or you choose to face it despite the excruciating pain. In the Quran, Surah Al-Kahf 18:28, Allah says, "Patiently stick with those who call upon their Lord morning and evening, seeking His pleasure. Do not let your eyes look beyond them, desiring the luxuries of this worldly life, and do not obey those whose hearts we have made heedless of our remembrance, who follow only their desires and whose state is total loss." When I first heard this, it gave me an insight into myself, into the way that I have been operating, which is, without even realizing it, this is the thing, the ego can be so pervasive and it justifies itself. So I would I'd be seeking the things that look most appealing outwardly, like external beauty, friends who are cool, who are who have status. Not so much material things. I don't think I've ever really been a materialistic person, but prestige and accolades, recognition from other people. A lot of what I do has been driven by that. And I think when you're driven by those things, it's really easy to get burnt out in your pursuit of those things, because you don't feel fulfilled or rewarded until you achieve them. So if you're working your ass off in pursuit of, for example, recognition, you don't get any, because recognition is, I think it's, in this day and age, it's an abused and misused resource. I think the wrong people get recognition for the wrong things. And if you're one of those people who is constantly striving, a conscientious person who is trying to stay steadfast, trying to do the right thing all the time, your life isn't going to look very exciting to the outside observer. What it comes down to is, are you willing to part ways with the idealized version of yourself who has all of the shiny things externally, whether that be wealth, material wealth, assets, a perfect marriage or a perfect relationship, a booming business, or the perfect friend group. Personally, I'm someone who's addicted to excitement and who's addicted to novelty. And if you're the same way, I can see how that would get in the way of your higher aspirations. So yeah, that ayah in Surah Al-Kahf is extremely, extremely potent. And I go back to it every now and then, and it hasn't lost its impact. It's really hard to face the reality of where you actually are, despite the months, years of wasted effort, seemingly wasted effort. You never know when your past experience is going to come in clutch. But learning how to catalyze these feelings of discomfort and frustration and turn them into things that you can take action on, that is a skill. And it's one that I will be honing for the rest of my life. That's all I wanted to say today. Bye.